Welcome to Principles of Management. This lecture is covering Chapter 4, Ethics and Social Responsibility. The learning outcomes include identify common kinds of workplace deviance, describe how the U.S. Sentencing Commission Guidelines Manual for Organization encourages ethical behavior, including how to calculate fines for unethical behavior, describes what influences ethical decision-making, apply the practical steps managers can take to improve ethical decision-making in the real-world situation. Explain to whom organizations are socially responsible. Explain what organizations are socially responsible. And identify how organizations can respond to societal demands for social responsibility. And explain whether social responsibility hurts or helps an organization's economic performance. Ethics is a set of moral principles or values that defines right and wrong for a person or a group. Ethical behavior follows acceptable principles of right and wrong. Workplace deviance is unethical behavior that violates organizational norms about right and wrong. It falls into several categories. These categories include production deviance, which hurts the quality and quantity of work produced. Property deviance is unethical behavior aimed at company property or products. Political deviance is using one's influence to harm another in the company. Personal aggression is hostile, aggressive behavior towards others. This just gives you a nice table of the different types of workplace deviance, and it shows which ones are organizational, which ones are interpersonal, and rates it from minor to serious. Since 1984, when the U.S. Sentencing Commission was created, the Guidelines Manual established that companies can be prosecuted and punished even if management didn't know about the unethical behavior. Penalties can be substantial, with maximum fines approaching $600 million. Nearly all businesses are covered by the U.S. Sentencing Commission guidelines. The guidelines cover offenses defined by federal laws such as invasion of privacy, price fixing, fraud, customs violations, antitrust violations, civil rights violations, theft, money laundering, conflicts of interest, embezzlement, dealing in stolen goods, copyright infringements, extortion, and much more. The guidelines are intended to punish after and prevent before crimes to occur. The guidelines do impose smaller fines on companies that take proactive steps to encourage ethical behavior or voluntarily disclose illegal activities to federal authorities. The fine is calculated by the following steps. The base fine is determined by the level of offense that occurred. The judge then computes a culpability score, which is a way of assigning blame to the company. The total fine is computed by multiplying the base fine by the culpability score. This outlines the compliance program steps from the U.S. Sentencing Commission Guidelines Manual. Ethical intensity is the degree of concern people have about ethical issues. The 6 factors that must be taken into account when determining the ethical intensity of an action includes the magnitude of consequences, the total harm or benefit derived from the ethical decision. Social consensus is an agreement on whether behavior is good or bad. Probability of the effect is a chance that something will happen that results in harm to others. Temporal immediacy is the time between act and the consequences of the act produces. Proximity of the effect is the social, psychological, cultural, physical distance of a decision maker from those affected by his or her decisions. Concentration of effect is how much an act affects the average person. Psychologist Lauren Kohlberg says decisions are based on the level of moral development. Kohlberg identifies 3 phases of moral development with 2 stages in each phase. At the pre-conventional level of moral development, people decide based on selfish reasons. People at the conventional level of moral development make decisions that conform to societal expectations, and people at the post-conventional level of moral development use internalized ethical principles to solve ethical dilemmas. According to Professor LaRue Hosmer, a number of different ethical principles can be used to make business decisions. Long-term self-interest, religious injunctions, governmental requirements, individual rights, personal virtue, disruptive justice, and utilitarian benefits. All these ethical principles encourage managers and employees to take others' interests into account when making ethical decisions. However, each principle leads to very different ethical actions. Principle of long-term self-interest never takes any action that is not in your own organization's long-term self-interest. Principle of religious injunction, never take any action that is not kind and that does not build sense of community. Principle of government requirements, never take any action that violates the law or the law represents the minimal moral standard. Principles of individual rights, never take any action that infringes on others' agreed upon rights. Principle of personal virtue, never do anything that is not honest, open, truthful, and that you would not be glad to see reported in the newspapers or on TV. Principles of disruptive justice, never take any action that harms the least fortunate among us, the poor, the uneducated, or the unemployed. Principle of utilitarian benefits, never take any action that does not result in the greater good for society. Managers can encourage more ethical decision-making in their organization by carefully selecting and hiring ethical employees, establishing a specific code of ethics, training employees to make ethical decisions, and creating an ethical climate. Overt integrity tests estimate job applicants' honesty by asking them directly what they think or feel about theft or about punishment of unethical behavior. Personality-based integrity tests indirectly estimate job applicants' honesty by measuring psychological traits such as dependability and conscientiousness. Almost all large corporations have ethics codes in place. Two things must still happen if those codes are to encourage ethical decision-making and behavior. A company must communicate its codes to others, both inside and outside the company. Management must also develop practical ethical standards and procedures specific to the company's line of business. Managers must sponsor and be involved in ethics and compliance training in order to create an ethical company culture. Ethics training has several objectives: develop employees' awareness of ethics, achieve credibility with employees, teach employees a practical model of ethical decision-making. Organizational culture is key to fostering ethical decision-making. Establishing an ethical climate requires several steps. Managers, especially top managers, must act ethically. Top managers should be active in and committed to all company ethics programs. Put in place a reporting system that encourages managers and employees to report potential ethic violations. Management must fairly and consistently punish those who violate the company's code of ethics. Social responsibility is a business's obligation to pursue policies, make decisions, and take action that benefits the society. There are two perspectives regarding to whom organizations are socially responsible. The shareholder model holds that the only social responsibility a business has is to maximize profit and benefiting the shareholders. The stakeholder model holds that management's most important responsibility is the firm's long-term survival, not just maximizing the profits, which is achieved by satisfying the interests of multiple corporate stakeholders, not just the shareholders. Primary stakeholders are the groups on which the organization depends for its long-term survival. They include shareholders, employees, customers, suppliers, governments, and local communities. Secondary stakeholders, such as the media, Special interest groups can influence or be influenced by the company. Companies can best benefit their stakeholders by fulfilling their economic, legal, ethical, and discretionary responsibilities. Economic and legal responsibilities are at the bottom of the pyramid because they play a larger part in the company's social responsibility than do the ethical and discretionary responsibilities. Historically, economic responsibilities, or making a profit by producing a product or service valued by society, has been a business's most basic social responsibility. Legal responsibility is a company's social responsibility to obey society's laws and regulations as it tries to meet its economic responsibilities. Social responsiveness refers to a company's strategy to respond to stakeholders' economic, legal, ethical, or discretionary expectations concerning social responsibilities. For social responsiveness, strategies differ in the extent to which the company is willing to act to meet or exceed social expectations. A company using reactive strategy will do less than society expects. A company using defensive strategy would admit responsibility for a problem, but would do the least required to meet societal expectations. A company using a accommodative strategy will accept responsibility for a problem and take progressive approach by doing all that could be expected to solve the problem. A company using proactive strategy will anticipate responsibility for a problem before it occurs, do more than what is expected to address the problem, and lead the industry in its approach. Recent research shows that it pays to be socially responsible. There's no trade-off between social responsibility and economic performance. And it usually does pay to be socially responsible, and that relationship becomes stronger, particularly where the company or its products have a strong reputation for social responsibility. Being socially responsible might be the right thing to do, and it usually is associated with increased profits, but does not guarantee a business success. Thank you again for listening to one of these lectures. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me.